Yeah, I'm going to give you a little bit of a conspiratorial type thing, and I think maybe most people think it's a little too far out there, but I think it actually goes into reality. And I used to read a lot before they had the internet about a lot of different things that went on, and I guess geopolitics, but what happened behind the scenes, more like of a military nature, and some of the things like right from the beginning. Um, you know, I was aware that the fall of the Soviet Union was basically planned or was in coordination with the West, or it looks like very much it was in coordination with the West. But I also want to relate that to some of the stuff that even goes on today, even in the alternative media, which I don't trust at all. But just to give you an example of something from way back, and you probably never heard of these names at all. He was the Polish ambassador from Poland to Japan, and he defected in 1981. So 30 years ago, more than 30 years, 32 years ago. He's not alive today. I think he died some years ago. I think he was 76 years old in 2007 or something like that. Um, but he defected in 1981, and he used to write a lot of articles about Poland. And if you people are aware or not, Poland was the first one to break away from the Soviet bloc, the communist bloc, right? And their solidarity leader was Lech Walesa. But Zdzisław Ruarez, who was the Polish ambassador, defected. He was the Polish ambassador to Japan. He said that the whole thing was basically contrived, where it's basically false opposition. And actually, he came out with a number of things where people who were communist leaders were former communists and instantly became capitalist. If there was really an overthrow, they would have killed a whole bunch of people, versus like there's relatively little bloodshed that happened. Like in the case of Lech Walesa, he used to say that, looking at stories from Zdzisław Juarez from a long time ago, if I remember these right, they stuck in my mind. But he says Lech Walesa was even brought into the protest against the establishment, against the Communist Party. He was brought into these protests by the Naval Secret Service, the establishment itself. So, but people just want to believe what they want to believe, So it's like, but that's pretty much. It was obvious that everything that fell apart in the communist bloc nations was really planned all ahead of time. Now, I want to jump ahead to something, and I think this is kind of like minor, but it's my own suspicion. I don't see anybody else putting anything out on this. I remember like when Abby Martin went to Russia Today or something, or one of those shows. She's got her own show someplace or something. Uh, like right before that happened, or right in the transition where she was going from the supposed alternative media to being hired by Russia Today with her own show, whatever the hell that was, breaking something, whatever it was. There was an incident with Rand Paul, and she was supposedly interviewing him, like being a pest or something like that, and asking him when he was walking away, what about the Bilderberger meeting? What about the Bilderberger meeting? And actually, I really don't think too much about anybody who goes to the Bilderberger meeting like they're a big conspiratorialist. They could be just, playing the game for all I know. And it's a tea party, It's not always everybody that goes in, that's in the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations, or goes to a Bilderberg meeting. Not every single person, some evil conspiratorial person trying to take over the world. But she was asking about the Bilderberger meeting. And the story was, right before she started this show, it was like, supposedly Rand Paul wanted to have her arrested for harassing him and have her fired and all this other shit. That's what the rumor was. But I almost smell it like this. It's like that. I think the whole thing was a ruse. Rand Paul is excellent when he was talking about the drones and doing that filibuster. But this is where I suspect any established alternative media, or really like most of the politicians that are anti big government and all this type of stuff, I think they're basically a game. You're going to get behind these people, and you're basically going to waste your efforts because they're only going to go so far. They tell you a lot of good shit you want to hear once in a while, but they're only going to go so far. You know, if they had an actual way to hit them in the jugular, I doubt they would do it because, see, that's almost like the same deal like when I compare with the communist bloc nations all flipped over to capitalism. The game is you got to be shrewd and you got to fool people. That's 99% of it. And, you know, I see this going on in the alternative media too. So actually, like when Abby Martin went to her new show, I think this whole thing with Rand was basically a bunch of BS. You know, it's maybe it's too far out there, but I'm not, you know, a lot of times I found that things are that far out there. If somebody's been an established politician for a long time, like in the case of Ron Paul, he's been around forever. Rand Paul, you know, he basically, you know, made sure Rand is in there good and everything like that. He's got his political career secured. They're not going to really buck the establishment too much. It's almost like you got to have somebody completely from the outside. And I think anybody that works for RT, they're a sellout. Now, I would, you know, if they gave me a check, fine, you know. But would I say, would it keep me from saying Putin's the biggest, richest, freaking czarist dictator in the world practically? No. So they wouldn't give me a check, you know what I mean? But I take any money those fuckers gave me anyway, but it doesn't mean I change my tune, you know what I mean? So, as far as, you know, like what goes on in the alternative media, especially like heavily financed alternative media that's been around a long time, like Alex Jones and things, I don't trust that shit at all. I don't trust it at all. And you got to remember, the way, you know, I almost got to hate to say it, almost like that classic communist stuff, but that's, a lot of that stuff is true. They're the freaking shrewdest bastards in the world, man. They fool people. So they always set up false opposition. That's the classic way. It's always been the way. So a lot of people just won't believe it because it seems a little too outlandish. But you know, actually the solution is always to think for yourself. Don't let anybody do your thinking for you. Just take the facts and run with them. But keep a suspicious eye on anything. Especially if somebody's making a lot of money off the alternative, or they got a great big super following, you ought to suspect them too. It's the smaller individual people that you're probably getting more accurate information from. So, but people usually want to hear, like, usually when there's a big problem, they want a leader and they want a voice for them, and they all get behind that shit. That's where they get scammed. So, you know, I think like the alternative media is really pretty much controlled by the establishment for the most part. And you know, anybody associated with Russia Today, and I don't trust Alex Jones at all. You know, I heard this thing about the Bill Hicks, that he's actually Bill Hicks. I don't know, but I don't trust that media hound at all. He's bad news. He's just got to be the guy right in the front, right on the top. You know what I mean? So, I mean, at the best, he's just trying to grab as much glamour and attention that he's the alternative media leader and all this kind of shit. So, it's not necessarily a good thing. But just beware that, you know, in the alternative media, anybody that's got a good size glossy production going, they're probably bought and paid for by the establishment themselves. That's pretty much all of them. So think for yourself. That's all I got to say. And some of that story, you know, like that stuff I told you about, you know, Lech Walesa, he's probably brought out to power by the communist himself. You know, people won't believe that today. People didn't believe it then. But it's a fact. A long time ago, the Eastern Bloc nations were told to fall. And there is a long-range plan. It's so long-range that people aren't really thinking about it too much anymore. But don't trust the alternative media. And don't go against the United States ever. Just stick with your Bill of Rights. That's all.